So today we will do the anterior triangle, dissection of the anterior triangle. So anterior triangle is also called the exposed V of the neck. So this is the V-shaped area that is called the anterior triangle. So here the mandibles, ramus, the body of the lower border of the body of the mandible, posterior border of the ramus, this is the head or the condyloid process of the mandible, this is the TM joint, the styloid process, stylomastoid foramen, the mastoid process, and the skull. So this is the exposed V of the neck. So the neck starts from the lower border of the base of the mandible and it ends below at the sternal notch, the upper border of the manubrium sterni. We have done the thorax. We know what is the name. This is the sternal notch. It is not straight. It is slightly concave. And on the lateral side, there are two articular facets. Anterior articular facet is for the clavicle and posterior articular facet is for the first rib. So here the collarbone or the clavicle articulates. So upper border of the clavicle and upper border of the manubrium sterni is the start of the thorax and end of the neck. And the medial end of the sternoclavicular joint, this is called the sternoclavicular joint, both the side is strengthened by a ligament that is called the interclavicular ligament. It stabilizes the sternoclavicular joint and keep the two clavicles together in touch with the manubrium sterni. So it is a ligament, interclavicular ligament. So in the dissection part of the anterior triangle, we cut from the mastoid process. A cut is down of the skin up to the sternoclavicular joint, from mastoid process to the sternoclavicular joint. So we cut here. Another cut we make from the mastoid process to the TM joint and the posterior border of the ramus of the mandible, then base of the mandible, and right meet with the left. So this is the skin incision we make to expose the what is the anterior triangle, what lies beneath the skin of our anterior triangle. So this cut is made in the dissection part. So everybody bring the dissection box in the D hall in the morning with the Cunningham's dissector. Then you will understand the whole of the dissection part. So here when we cut, and another cut is given to the skin over the sternoclavicular and the manubrium sterni. So here we expose the skin laterally. Another cut is given to the upper border of the clavicle as well to expose the skin flap. So when we remove the skin of this region, what you expect, the second layer is the superficial fish. So everywhere we see the yellow color fat. Just after removal, the skin of the anterior triangle. So this yellow color means the fat with the loose areolar tissue which is holding it. So if you are seeing the yellow color fat, means you are seeing the second layer of the human body, that is the superficial fish. Everywhere there is a yellow color fat, that is the content of the superficial fascia from head to toe Everywhere in the whole of the human body, same arrangement. Below the skin is the superficial fascia. So this is what you see, the fat. And in the superficial fascia, what is its third content? Fat, loose adipose tissue, cutaneous, artery, veins, nerves, lymphatics and lymph nodes. The same arrangement we see here. So in this anterior triangle, what we see from the chin, just below the chin, they start two veins parallel to each other and collecting the tributaries of the veins, the impure blood from the anterior triangle. So these veins are visible starting from chin down towards the thorax. So this vein is called the anterior jugular vein because it is in the anterior triangle, so they are called anterior jugular vein. In the posterior triangle it was external jugular vein, but this is anterior triangle, so this is the superficial fascia. It is lying in the fat. When it reaches 1 inch above the sternal notch, the right and the left anterior jugular veins, they fuse together, they unite together. So the blood comes together, and this structure, which is so formed by the union of the two anterior jugular veins just 1 inch above the sternal notch here, is called jugular venous arc. Jugular venous arc. So arc is formed. So whole of the blood is coming from below, and laterally this jugular venous arc will open into the or drain into a deep vein which is present in relation to the first rib, because first rib is also articulated with the behind the sternoclavicular joint. We have done the first rib. We know there is on the medial border there is a tubercle that is called scalene tubercle, and in this scalene tubercle is insertion of scalenus anterior muscle. And on the superior surface of the first rib there are two grooves. One groove is anterior to the scalene tubercle, other is the posterior to the scalene tubercle. So the anterior groove of the first rib is for the, always remember, for subclavian vein, and posterior groove is for the subclavian artery, that you have to remember. So here subclavian vein is in the anterior groove is already there. So this jugular venous arc will open into the subclavian vein. So it drains into it. So whole of the impure blood from the anterior or exposed V of the neck or the anterior triangle is now thrown into the deep vein, which is the subclavian vein. Why it is called deep vein? Because it lies below the deep fascia. So dotted means, I have made dotted means it lies deep. So it is a deep vein. Then in this superficial fascia of the anterior triangle, what else we see? That from the posterior triangle, from the posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, which forms the boundary of the anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, forms the boundary. And we know the sternocleidomastoid has got two origins, sterno and cleido. Sterno means it takes origin from the sternum, that is the manubrium sterni. So this is the origin of the sternal head, from the sternal notch of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And cleido means it takes origin from the medial 1/3 of the clavicle. So this is the clavicular head of sternocleidomastoid. Sternocleido. And then this muscle is so formed, runs upward for the insertion. And where it is inserted? On the lateral 2/3 of the superior nuchal line. Superior nuchal line. So this is the boundary of the anterior triangle. Sternocleidomastoid. Sternocleidomastoid is the insertion. So its name is telling origin, insertion as well as everything. So from its middle of the posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, it is the posterior triangle, we have done it, posterior triangle. From here, a nerve runs horizontally. From posterior triangle, it enters into the anterior triangle. Which is the name of this nerve? This is the transverse cutaneous nerve of the neck that we have done in the posterior triangle. Transverse cutaneous nerve of the neck. So it runs horizontally and it enters from the posterior triangle to the anterior triangle. See the fate of this nerve. When it enters the anterior triangle, it divides into two branches, ascending and descending branch. Ascending and descending branch. That is the transverse cutaneous nerve of neck. And the ascending branch, it will anastomose with the, this is the parotid gland we have done. So this will anastomose with the facial nerve, cervical branch of facial nerve. The ascending branch will communicate with the cervical branch of facial nerve, which comes out from the apex of the parotid gland. So parotid gland base is above and apex is downward. So out of the 5 branches, like the 5 fingers, the lowermost is the cervical branch. It comes out of the parotid gland after supplying the platysma muscle. We have done it. So platysma muscle, then it descends down to communicate with the ascending branch, and after communication then it supplies the skin of the anterior triangle. Same, the descending branch also supplies the skin of the anterior triangle up to the sternal notch. So this is the skin we have reflected. We have made the midline incision and this incision, and we have opened like a book. So skin, so it is a cutaneous nerve, S for S. So it is a sensory nerve supplying the skin covering our anterior triangle. So both ascending and descending branch, they also supply the skin. So this much we see in the anterior triangle, and accompanied from the with the veins, there are present superficial group of the cervical lymph node. So lymph node usually accompany the veins, and these veins, they carry the lymphatics with the lymph node together. So a lymph node may be also present here in the sternal notch also. So they are all intercommunicating, all lymph nodes. So they are the superficial cervical group of the lymph node. Superficial cervical group of the lymph node. So this much you have to make in your mind, that what is lying below the skin of our anterior triangle. So then it will be clear. So after seeing all these structures here, now we switch on to the deep dissection. In the deep dissection, we will remove everything and we will see that what lies deep to the anterior triangle. So after studying the superficial part of the dissection, now we will go in the deeper part of the anterior triangle to see what lies here. So this is the same clavicle and sternoclavicular joint. So here what we see below the supral fascia, what we expect, there is a deep fascia. This deep fascia is called the deep cervical fascia. What's the other name is the investing layer of the deep fascia, because it invests or go around the neck, plus it invests two muscles, envelops or surround two muscles, sternocleidomastoid and trapezius, and two glands. One is parotid, other is the submandibular gland. So it is called the investing layer of the deep fascia. Its attachment inferiorly on the upper border of this sternal notch, laterally attached to the superior border of the clavicle, laterally. That way attachment we will see in the dissection part after removal of everything after study. So here is the attachment plus sterno and cledo. Sternocleidomastoid muscle is visible here, lying below the deep fascia. So this is the inferior attachment, superiorly attached to the lower border of the body of the mandible. This is also called base of mandible. Base of the mandible here. Because there is no deep fascia on the face, we have seen. Deep fascia is absent in the two regions in the human body. One is the face, another is the abdomen. Why it is absent on the face? Because of the facial muscles. Because their origin is from the bone, but insertion is not on the bone, but insertion is on the dermis of the skin. So there is the absence of deep fascia. If there would have been deep fascia, our face would have been mask-like, expressionless, as in the hypothyroidism, or in Parkinsonism, or in edema or renal failure. So the face is the site of expression. Second specialty of the facial muscle is that all are subcutaneous. They all lie below the skin. All other muscles in the human body, they lie below the deep fascia. They are the deep structure. The fourth layer of the human body is the skeletal muscle. But in the face, they are all below the skin because of the absence of the deep fascia. And third specialty of the facial nerve muscle is that they are the muscles of expression. No other muscle of the human body is having the expression giving. So this is the three specialty. Anybody asks you what you know about the facial muscles. So one of the muscle is also present here, inserted over the skin. Below the skin is the subcutaneous muscle. In the anterior and the posterior triangle we have also done. That was the platysma. So platysma muscle is the very subcutaneous muscle. When you refract the skin of the anterior triangle, the same muscle we have seen in the posterior triangle. Same muscle is seen in the anterior triangle also. Platysma. Recus sardonicus we have done in the applied epilepsy. So this muscle takes origin from the fascia over the pectoralis major muscle, pectoral fascia. Plus it also takes origin from the fascia over the deltoid muscle laterally. Then fascia over the pectoralis major. Plus this is the sternal angle. And what is the sternal angle? Which rib is attached to here? Second rib. So it takes origin from the second intercostal space also. So this is the origin of platysma. First it forms the roof of the posterior triangle, then it forms the roof of the anterior triangle as well, because it is running obliquely from posterior to the anterior triangle. So this is the platysma, which is supplied by the cervical branch of the facial nerve. After supplying platysma, now it becomes sensory. So facial nerve is a mixed nerve. After supplying all the muscles of the face, it also supplies the skin of the anterior triangle after communicating with the ascending branch. So this diagram shows many things. So make it in your full page diagram. Whenever you have to revise the anterior triangle, just see the diagram, page by page, 1, 2, 3, and everything will be clear. The first, the second step of the dissection part. So it is attached to the lower border of the mandible. So when it comes to the angle of the mandible, here the body of the mandible now finishes. Then from here, the D fascia will go upward because somebody is waiting. Who is waiting? Parotid gland. So D fascia from the angle of the mandible goes upward over the apex of the parotid gland. And here this D fascia split into two laminas, two layers, to invest the parotid gland in it. So this is the parotid gland. So D fascia comes and it goes into anterior layer and posterior layer. And this D fascia forms the covering of the parotid gland, that is called parotid fascia. And this parotid fascia is closely adherent to the tissue of the parotid gland, tightly. This is the reason why any swelling of the parotid gland is very, very painful, because this is the D fascia which is stick to the surface of the superficial as well as the deep surface of the parotid gland. So it invests, or it forms an envelope of the parotid gland. That's why it's called investing layer. So the common disease of the parotid enlargement is the mumps, very common in the children. So it is a very painful condition. It is a viral infection. So it is why it is painful. The anatomy will tell why it is painful, because of the parotid fascia. When we go on the upper border, in the upper border, the superficial and the deep part, they goes separately, and loose area of tissue is present and fat is present in between the two. So this is how the cervical fascia goes upward. Another layer of this deep fascia, deep cervical fascia, it goes medial to the mandible, because another gland is waiting here. Because you have done the mandible, you know there is a line inside the mandible that is called the mylohyoid line. And above the mylohyoid line there is a fossa which is called sublingual fossa. And below the mylohyoid line there is another fossa with the depression which is called submandibular fossa. And on either side of the chin, inside the mandible, there are two fossa more. They are called digastric fossa. So three fossa you have to remember on the medial surface of the body of the mandible. One is above the mylohyoid line, and one is below, and other is behind the chin. And above it there are two genial tubercles, superior genial tubercle and inferior genial tubercles on the medial surface of the mandible body. So thoroughly do all the bones, skull as well as the mandible, then you can understand the head and neck. If you are not having the bones, so there is no need to read the anatomy, because it is useless. You will forget very quickly, unless or until you will mark the mandible or skull bones, all the muscles, origin, insertion every day till the end of the head and neck, then you will be thorough. Because everybody will be asked in the exam, mark the muscles of any muscle of the head and neck. Then you should know how to mark it, how much area. That's the submandibular gland also. It goes inside the mandible, medial side. Again it is split into the two laminas. One is superficial, other is deep to the submandibular superficial part. And then on the upper border of the submandibular gland, it again fuses to form one layer which is attached to the mylohyoid line. So anything which is attached to the bone gives the fixity. Now parotid gland lies over here. Parotid means parallel to, otid means ear. That's why its name is derived from. Parotid means parallel to the otid or ear. So you can't move the gland anywhere. Why? It is fixed in the anatomical position because of the parotid fascia. Similarly, submandibular gland is fixed because it is attached to the mylohyoid line. So mylohyoid line gives the bone to the fixity. Similarly, parotid gland is attached to the zygomatic arc, the superficial lamina, and deep lamina is attached to the tympanic part of the temporal bone. So this gives the fixity to the gland. They are not movable while you are chewing or doing any movement of the mandible. Then from the angle of the mandible, this D fascia will go, because here the body is finished. body start from here, that is the symphysis menti. Mandible develops from the two bones, they unite together. So body ends here, so the deep fascia will run, after giving the palatal fascia, it will run toward the styloid process. And here it becomes thick. This thickened part of the deep cervical fascia running from angle of mandible to the styloid process is called stylomandibular ligament. It becomes thick, condensed, fibrous. Collagen fibers become thick. They are called stylomandibular ligament. From here, the deep fascia is attached to the mastoid process, because mastoid process is near the styloid process. And from mastoid process, which is just behind the ear, this deep fascia will follow the superior nuchal line, because superior nuchal line and highest nuchal line, they end on the mastoid process. So from here, the deep fascia will go along the attachment to the superior nuchal line, and from superior nuchal line it reaches the midline. What lies here? External occipital protuberance, and here right meet with the left. So this is the complete arrangement. The superior attachment, you should know which bony points and where it is attached. That is how the question of the investing layer of the deep fascia, when it comes, you have to give the superior as well as inferior attachment of the this deep fascia. In the midline, here lies the deep fascia. After removal of everything, fat and see, what we see there lies the deep fascia. That is called the deep cervical fascia. So we cut in the midline like the skin, and we also reflect the deep fascia as well as from the anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid. We cut here and from below. So we cut and reflect the deep fascia as we have reflected the skin. So this is the deep fascia, the second layer we have reflected after the skin. So deep fascia like the skin is having the flap. So from the midline, the deep fascia, when it goes laterally, when it comes the anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, because its name is investing layer. So this deep fascia again split into two laminas. One is superficial to the sternocleidomastoid, other goes deep to the muscle. So it invests the sternocleidomastoid muscle. When it comes on the posterior border, it again fuses. It is fused. So anterior lamina, posterior lamina, on the posterior border it again fused to form one sheet of the deep fascia. This one sheet of deep fascia then forms the roof of posterior triangle. This is the roof of the posterior triangle. Below it is attached to the clavicle. And when it runs laterally, now another muscle is waiting, which is taking origin from the medial 1/3 of superior nuchal line, whose shape is the mathematical like the trapezius. Trapezium is the trapezius muscle, which is inserted on lateral 1/3 of clavicle. So trapezius anterior border is waiting. So on the anterior border of this trapezius, again this deep fascia split into two layers. Like sternocleidomastoid, it also envelops the trapezius, a sheet-like muscle. And both the superficial and the deep layers, they go posteriorly. And on the posteriorly, they get attached on the midline from external occipital protuberance down. That is called ligamentum nuchae. So ligamentum nuchae is the ligament of the neck of the below the foramen diagram there lies the cervical vertebra C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, and last vertebra is vertebra prominens with the longest spine, the C7 vertebra. So anteriorly there is a anterior vertebral muscles, and the spines of the cervical vertebra, they are bifid. They are the bifid spine, except C1 and C7. Spine is bifid. So it is attached to the external occipital protuberance, ligamentum nuchae, then it is attached to the external occipital crest up to the foramen magnum, then it is attached to the all the spines of the cervical vertebra. So this is the ligament of the neck. This is called ligamentum nuchae. So cervical vertebra, they are 7. They are not straight. We always make a convexity anteriorly. It's a normal curvature, and it forms a normal angle which is called lordotic angle, which is called cervical lordosis. Lordosis means anterior convexity. When we take the X-ray of the lateral view of the neck in the normal person, it is convex. Cervical spine from C1 to C7 is convex forward. It's a normal finding. So this angle is called lordotic angle or cervical lordosis. When a baby is born, this lordosis is absent. Cervical lordosis is not present when a baby is, if you take the lateral X-ray of the cervical spine of a newborn baby, it is straight. All vertebra, C1 to C7, they are all straight. When this curvature or lordosis appears, when the child start holding the head or on the neck, that is the milestone. When a baby is born, see the head of the baby is just rotating right and left. You can't hold like this, hold vertical the baby, because neck is not supported. Because pre-vertebral and post-vertebral cervical muscles, they are not developed till the age of, when the child start holding the neck on the shoulders, is 2.5 to 3 months. 2.5 to 3 months is called the head holding time. Head holding time. Before 2.5 to 3 months, the mother is not giving her baby to anybody, because she knows that the neck may be tilted anytime. Child has not started the holding the neck. So this is a physiological curvature, because head of the baby is large. There is a skull. Skull is a heavy structure, and in the skull there lies the brain with the CSF. So it is a quite heavy material, and the brain develops very rapidly in the children. So it takes 2.5 months to hold the head of the baby on the neck. So this is a physiological curvature to accommodate the head of the baby, weight of the head and the neck or the face. So this is the region of what is called cervical lordosis. 2.5 to 3 months. Anybody ask you when it starts? When we take the X-ray after 2.5 to 3 months of the baby lateral view, this will be like this. If in the adult, after the age of 40 or anything, if you find the straightening of the spine, that spine becomes bamboo-like, bamboo spine or straight spine. In the adult, it is the sign of cervical spondylitis. It's a disease. So straightening of the and absence of the lordotic angle in the adult is the sign of a disease that is called cervical spondylitis, which is very common nowadays after the age of 40. Maybe nowadays it has reduced the age to the 30 because of the wrong posture of the youngster on the laptop or mobile for hours together. So their spines, they are fixed. So more and more cases are young. Usually it was 40 plus disease or 50 plus disease, but now it has reduced to 25 plus or 30 plus disease. So this is the wrong posture of the nowadays. So this is the how cervical spine and the fascia, that is the deep cervical fascia, is investing the neck all around. You might have seen the people who are wearing the cervical collar. So wherever this cervical collar is touching, same is the superior and the inferior attachment of deep cervical fascia. And those cervical collar, why they are putting? Because of cervical spondylitis. The treatment of cervical collar application. So this is the deep fascia, investing layer. When it comes just 1 inch above the sternal notch, this deep cervical fascia split into 2 layers, anterior and posterior. The anterior layer is attached to the anterior border of the sternal notch, and posterior lamina is attached to the posterior border, so a space is created just 1 inch above the here, and this space is popularly known as suprasternal space of Burns. So Burns is the name of a scientist who discovered it. Burns, a gore da naam is Burns. Suprasternal space of the Burns. So it's a very theory question, important theory question. Sometimes you have to write the short note with the applied and everything about the suprasternal space of the Burns. So it lies 1 inch above the sternal notch, formed by the splitting of the midline split of the cervical fascia 1 inch above the cleft. So anterior, it is divided into anterior lamina and posterior lamina. Then it has got 5 fingers, 5 contents. Number 1 content is jugular venous arc. Number 2 content is interclavicular ligament. Number 3 content is sternal head of the sternocleidomastoid. The 4th content is the occasional lymph node. And 5th content is loose areolar tissue. 5 fingers, you have to remember 5. So just mentioning the 5 things is not enough. You have to explain everything then one by one. Make the heading. Number 1, what is interclavicular ligament? Write 2-3 lines about it. Number 2, jugular venous arc. Again write 2-3 lines about it. Because you have to fill 3 pages. No answer should be less than 3 pages, including diagram, in full page. You are not to make the small Chaurasia diagram, as I make full diagram, and I will practice you to make on the full page. Same you have to do in the examination. Make big diagram, full page, that will be clear, and color diagram. So, and again you have to write down about the sternal head of sternocleidomastoid. So that you have to expand, how to expand. This is just a common sense. But how to expand the answer, making the heading and subheading. Then relations. In the relation, what lies superficial to this suprasternal space is the skin and superficial fascia. Then what lies deep to this? Deep means if you remove this with contents and everything, what is there? Just touch above your sternal notch. Just deep touch. Touch your sternal notch. What do you feel here? Go deep slightly. Not much, because there may be choking, because what lies here? You feel the rings of cartilage. What is this? Windpipe here. That is the deep relation. So deep relation is trachea covered by pretracheal fascia, which is also the extension of investing layer of the deep. Same pretracheal fascia which invests from the false capsule of the thyroid gland is also covering the trachea. So that is the deep content. And just deep to the trachea, what lies behind the trachea? Food pipe, that is the esophagus. Trachea, windpipe and food pipe, they are parallel to each other. Anterior is the trachea, behind is your food pipe. It also passes through this. That is more deeper. And what lies behind the esophagus? Bodies of cervical vertebra. So that you have to write down. Relations, make the heading relations. Superficial, second heading deep. Then superficial, 1-2 line. Then deep, 1-2-3 line. This is how to explain. There is an art in attempting the theory questions. There is an art to write the answer, and that examiner will give you the reward of that art. So anatomy is the subject of art. Diagram is art way art. Who is good in the diagram will score very well in the theory, and his name will be there, I think, in the distinction of the anatomy. So this is the art subject. So then comes the last, applied. What is the applied of the suprasternal space of buns? Anybody? You have done, I think this chapter you have finished. What was the applied? Sir. Tracheostomy means, trachea means, ostomy means, osteum. Osteum means opening. To make a opening or a hole in the trachea, this procedure is called tracheostomy. You have to give the one-page answer of what is tracheostomy in the applied of this question if it comes. So in the accidental cases, or when the respiratory distress is there due to any reason, or when a patient is in the coma, or he can't breathe his own because of the head injury, his respiratory century has abolished, or something has gone wrong to the hypoxia is there, something is there, we have to save the life of the patient. Then we have to do the procedure which is called tracheostomy. When his oxygen is going down, as you have seen nowadays in the corona cases, some are put on the ventilator and some are put directly on the tracheostomy. In the tracheostomy, as we know, here lies the trachea with C-shaped cartilaginous rings. After that it dips into the thorax, and at the sternal angle the trachea bifurcates into right and left principal bronchus. Remember your thorax. So here just like the trachea. So it is the emergency procedure. We have to save the life of the patient. We have got no time, otherwise patient will die. His oxygen level is below 40 or 35. He is going to finish within a second. That is the corona cases you are seeing nowadays in the media, in the TV, in the newspapers. Hypoxia is the main reason. So what we do here, we cut the skin. We know the superficial relation. Who know the anatomy, the doctor attending the patient, he knows the anatomy of the suprasternal space of the buns. So he will cut the skin. Below the skin, the trachea is there in the deep relation. So we make in between any two cartilaginous rings, we make a hole here. This is called tracheostomy procedure. We take a sharp scalpel and we just stab and make a hole here in between the two cartilaginous rings. And in the market there is a tracheostomy tube is available, plastic tube. This is called tracheostomy tube. So this narrow nozzle we put into the hole, and this here it remains outside, and we fix it with the thread and behind we tie it. So it is fixed here. We put the direct nozzle of the oxygen cylinder into the tracheostomy tube. So directly oxygen is going into the right and left bronchus and to both the lungs. So this procedure you have to write down. Emergency, to save the life of the patient, we have to put the tracheostomy tube. But this is a very risky procedure, because what are the side effects? We may cut the jugular venous arc because it is one of the content, and blood will go into the trachea, there will be choking, and patient will die. Not because of hypoxia, but you have made it. Secondly, you may cut the interclavicular ligament, and it gives the instability to the sternoclavicular joint, will be unstable. There may be dislocation later on. You may cut the sternal head of sternocleidomastoid. Muscles, they are rich in blood supply. Again there will be bleeding, that blood will go into the right or left lung or bilaterally. There will be choking. So this is the contraindications. So this much you have to write down about what is tracheostomy. So the preferred site of the tracheostomy is the this is called the low tracheostomy. Preferred site of the tracheostomy is at the level of second and third tracheal ring. This is the safest area for tracheostomy. Above the isthmus of the thyroid gland. There is no any blood, there is no any bleeding, no ligament is there, no muscle is there. So they call high tracheostomy. But it is done on the elective, this is called the elective operation. Elective means when we have got a sufficient time to think for the surgery. But the low tracheostomy in the suprasternal was the emergency tracheostomy. When we got no time, patient is dying, we have to save the life with any risk. So such a surgery is called emergency surgery. And when we do the high tracheostomy, it is called the elective surgery. Because we have to think about all pros and cons. We have got a sufficient time to save the life, but we have to take all the precautions. So such an operation is called the elective operation. So this much you have to write down about whenever a question of the suprasternal space of the buns come.